So it's ultimately up to Phil, I guess.
I'll go really slow.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that.
Everybody ready?
Look, that'd be bad.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to call our March 2020 Planning Commission meeting to order. Jessica, can you give us a roll call, please?
Wendy Birmingham,
Here.
Robin Bridges,
Here.
Phil Chancellor,
Here.
Marcus Marshall,
Here.
Warren McCord,
Here.
Nonette Reese,
Here.
Bob Rittenbaugh.
Here.
All right, before we get started, I'll go ahead and go over the rules of engagement here for the few that are here. Tonight, the commission's going to be presented with a number of agenda items by the planning commissions, or by the city planning staff. And once they're done presenting, the representative will have an opportunity to make any kind of comments or clarifications as necessary. And then I'll open a public hearing as appropriate. Some things do require public hearings, some don't. And at this time will be your opportunity to address the commission on the agenda item at hand. I ask that you keep your talk time to 5 minutes, and please keep your comments relevant to the case at hand. After everyone has spoken, I'll close the public hearing, and then a member of the staff will have an opportunity to clarify any issues that came up, and then we will have a motion, some discussion if necessary, and a vote. The commission will vote based on state and local laws, the city's comprehensive plan 2030, and the general good of the community. Having summarized those basic rules of engagement, I also like to highlight the fact that we have a different role when it comes to subdivision plats. We are the final authority for those by state Alabama statute. And once we make the decision on the subdivision plats, those are final. The rest of the decisions are only recommendations for the city council. While public hearings are required on most plats, and we welcome all comments, I want you to please understand that the commission's authority is strictly limited to confirming that the plat meets or exceeds certain specific requirements codified in laws and regulations. Finally, I'd just like to reinforce the fact that other than subdivision plats, that anything else will be going to the city council for final approval, and you also have another chance to make inputs at that time. Okay, the first item of business is citizens communication. This is a time where there's two different things. If you're interested in addressing anything on the consent agenda or anything that's not even on the agenda at all, this is just kind of a special public hearing time for those two different categories. And real quickly, there's only two things on the consent agenda: the meeting minutes from the packet and regular meeting for last month, and the Swan Farm annexation. So if anybody would like to come and speak on those, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and we move on to the consent agenda. So just mentioned that are just the meeting minutes and the Swan case, which is AX 2022-002. Easy for me to say. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve consent agenda, including packet and regular meeting minutes from February.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, on to new business. The first item in new business is a rezoning of the Swan Farm property that was just annexed. This is RZ 2022-002. And Ms. Shepherd.
So the site that you just annexed in is approximately 77.3 acres. It is south and east of the new Cox Road and Wire Road roundabout. And the current use of the property is pasture in that northern front part and manufactured home park. The request is to rezone from that rural designation to development district housing. The property to the north and south are both outside of the city limits, and they are also manufactured home parks. To the east is CDD, and then CDD with a PDD overlay. And then to the west is DDH with a PDD overlay, and that one was pretty recent and pretty similar to this one. It's vacant, but it is also a mixed-use development. The intent is for the DDH to be the base zoning, and you will hear a plan development district request next. The proposed development will be mixed use. It's going to have residential, and that will be townhomes and single family and commercial as well. City of Auburn can provide sanitary sewer, and Auburn Waterworks cannot provide water. There are 2 land use plan designations on this one property. Oh, I don't think I have that on there. That north triangle part is, let me see, low, medium, mixed use, and the remainder, that southern part, is master plan mixed use. So there's not too much of a difference except for the density on that. Staff recommends forwarding to City Council with a recommendation for approval. DDH is consistent with the zoning of the area and the land use plan and where the development trends are going in that area.
Okay, thank you. For Basquin, any comments?
Yeah, Morgan, one thought. If Auburn isn't providing the water, what's the likely source of the water for this summer?
Locopocha? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Locha-
I just moved here. I was hoping you wouldn't ask me, actually. I should have practiced.
Which, a related question, which I was going to bring up as we got to the other items related to this, is that, is our public safety and water people convinced that they can supply the appropriate water pressure to deal with the proposed developments that'll be forthcoming?
Well, we won't be doing the water, but
I know we won't be doing the
sewer
water.
and, yeah, they have signed off for the water.
They have signed.
Locopocha, yes. Locopocha.
All right, then that brings me to
Keep
the
making her say
question
it.
of liability. I mean, this has come up before, and I just want to get it in the record. Should they not have the pressure to accommodate some emergency in that area, public safety emergency, fire, something like that, when we develop that, when that is developed, are we held harmless?
In the annexation, there is a statement from the fire department in there as well, on the last page maybe. Just how long it would take to get there, I think, is response times.
Well, that's us getting there to tap into somebody else's hydrants. And I assume the city is comfortable with this.
This isn't the only development.
No, it
that has-
hasn't. This has happened many times before, and I just raise that point each time, that it,
Because each time is another house, yes.
well, each time, yeah, it's another, and my question is, I trust our council has felt that we're indemnified against this, any liability of somebody else's water supply not adequately meeting the development that we approved.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, sort of a question and maybe a statement at the same time. I know Chris is here from our city water and sewer department. And, if we have a minimum pressure requirement in our code, and I couldn't tell you if we do or not, but if we did, and typically for fire service, there's a minimum pressure requirement. I don't know if we know at this point in time if they can provide it and meet any minimums that we have or not. But Chris, if you do know and you want to offer any comments, you're welcome to.
I can't speak directly to what Lochapoka can provide, but during the design review process, we work with inspection services as well as Lochapoka to make sure that adequate flow is available for the development.
Is that a matter of course, or is that something that's done for this particular project?
That's a matter of course. That's
Okay.
in our manual. It's part of the process.
That you coordinate with appropriate, okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Hopefully that should help us.
Yeah, we have to do that for all developments.
Okay. All right.
Brett Basquin, Foresight Group. To answer your question too, we have done some flow tests out there for the site across the street as well, and they're sufficient. Actually, Lochapoka just installed as part of the roundabout project, just upgraded a lot of their mains through there to big 12-inch mains. They're actually doing a booster project to even get even more pressure that's supposed to be coming online here in the next 2 months, according to them. But based on what we got, the other part of that is the way the city's manual works is that when we annex and come in, we have to prove to them that there's sufficient pressure for them to approve our plans. So if it comes in and there's not sufficient water pressure, they wouldn't issue us a permit to basically construct the infrastructure regardless. So that's just part of that standard DRT approval process, just to give you a little bit of background on that. So in regards to, the annexation came in with nothing. Some of the conditions in this rezoning to DDH are similar to what's in the PDD as well. So some of them are duplicate. But there are a couple in here I just want to address as we go. One of the other things I was going to say is there's a reason why we're doing DDH. In DDH, you're limited, or it goes by the family definition, so no more than 2 unrelated in there. If we chose just say, for instance, if we chose CDD or something else, you could have up to 5 unrelated. This development is not catering towards the student population. It's catering towards, really retirees, step-down buyers, young families, young professionals, and that type of stuff. Not the, none of this stuff is 5-bedroom type stuff. So there's a reason why we're going on the DDH. All right. In regards to the specific staff comments on this one, there's 3 of them in engineering. I just want to address. Do you have a copy of them? All right. So do you have a copy of the?
We can wait till the PDD and then it will be up
But
there on
it-
the screen.
Yeah, but if I get the conditions approved on here, I don't want them approved on here and then changed on the PDDs because they're still. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, I don't have a problem with you going through all this, but for clarity, in the rezoning request, they're staff comments.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not true conditions of approval, because on a straight rezoning, we don't put conditions of approval there. They would be conditions of approval on the PDD.
Okay, so if they approve these with staff comments, they're technically, and then they're changed on the PDD,
Right.
we're good?
Yeah, because these are just comments that staff has put in the
Okay.
report, so
All right.
people
Well,
are aware
if that's
of
fine,
these
I'll just
issues.
address them all in PDD. That way you only have to make one decision on the comments. You don't have to carry them
We
through.
appreciate that.
All right? That'll work for me. I'm good with that.
All right.
Okay.
So do I have any other clarification type questions or motion?
I have one. Difference in density between DDH and master plan mixed use.
Master plan mixed use does not give a density, so it's just the
Underline.
average of the area. And DDH is a maximum of 5.5.
And they're maximizing that in the,
No, they're not.
They're not,
They're
okay.
gonna be a little under that.
okay,
4 and some change. I
got it. Sorry, I missed packet.
I was gonna go over it next.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to approve RZ 2022-002.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay. Oh, we didn't have a public hearing.
Oopsie, we are on fire tonight, kids.
Let's see, what's the appropriate way to undo a motion and a vote?
Have a public hearing after the fact.
I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to give you
Well.
legal advice, okay? But, I think if you want to just say, we didn't have the public hearing, we're going to open the public hearing, see if anybody wants to say
Yeah.
anything. And if there are comments, and then that could have a difference in your vote, then you could go back and do a revote on the
My
process.
apologies. So what I would like to do, having forgotten to go through the public hearing process on this particular item, which is Swan Farm rezoning, case RZ 2022-002, I'm going to open the public hearing and ask if anybody would like to come forward and speak on that item. Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay. All right, on to the next one. Okay, so the next item of business is the PDD, the Plan Development District for Swan Farm. This is RZ 2022-003. Ms. Shepherd.
Yes. This is the same site that was just rezoned to DDH. This is to have that planned development district overlay on top. A master development plan and a written report as required were submitted. All the conditions of the property, everything said earlier is the same. And now I'm gonna go over what they, oh, I forgot them. Okay, sorry. Now I was gonna go into detail on what they are proposing. Here's the site. So this is the exhibit. If you see in that top north corner, the 4 acres is the commercial. They're gonna have 4 buildings. It's gonna be about 64,000 square feet. A conditional use has been submitted, and that'll be the next thing you hear today. And so it'll be whatever's permitted in DDH and then the conditional use. They'll be able to access that site from Cox and Wire Road. They have put a majority of the parking behind the buildings, which we like. Then the residential use is the bulk of the property. It is 73.23 acres, and it is all that part right here. It is gonna be 115 residential townhomes. These are them right here. 31 of those are gonna be front entry, 84 of those are gonna be rear entry, and they're color coded. There are gonna be 244 single-family detached. Those are the purple and gray colors over here. 168 of those are rear entry. These are the middle ones. And those are gonna have a 40-foot lot width, which is 10 less than the minimum. But we'll go over that later. And then 76 are gonna be front entry with the minimum of 50 foot, and those are the perimeter ones right here. There is gonna be a total of 359 residential units. The density is gonna be 4.64. That's less than DDH maximum. The open space requirement is met. They are providing 23.3 acres. 23.2 acres are required. There's going to be a pool and clubhouse right there. The street system within the development is a mix of public and private. There are sidewalks within the development to get to the open space, to get to the amenities, and then there are sidewalks as required by the zoning ordinance as well. The next part is the incentives and exchanges. They have 2 incentives and 2 exchanges. The first incentive is a reduction in lot width, like I said earlier, for the use of 40-foot wide lots for 168 of those single-family detached homes, the ones right here. And then the second incentive they're asking for is to increase the ISR. So they're asking for up to 20% increase in ISR for the single family and an increase in up to 10% for the townhome area. And then there's a chart that will tell you what those numbers would be. So for the townhome, what it would be right now is 0.75. If it's granted, that would become 0.85. And then the same with the single family. What it is now would be the maximum of 0.50. If approved, the maximum would be 0.70. And then the exchanges that they're offering are a vegetated buffer along the perimeter and limited access. Let's see, there's gonna be rear alley access to all single-family detached and townhomes, with the exception of the perimeter ones right here. And the applicant in that written report provided a statement on why those exchanges would go with those incentives and how that would benefit the development. The development itself is in line with the area and the land use plan. Most of that area is master plan mixed use or large lot residential. The density in that area ranges from 1.42 to 6 dwelling units per acre. So it's quite a big difference just within this area. And then the proposed zoning right here is similar to the Cox and Wire development that was approved just to the east. The applicant has been working with us on this for some time. Revisions were made, updates were made, certain changes were made just based off comments. There was a reduction in units, street stubs became cul-de-sacs, things like that. We did add conditions for approval if you do recommend approval. We put those in there just to get clarification on certain things that were not addressed. And the applicant met with us, and he had some concerns with numbers 1, 4, 9, and 12, which you will, here are, what, were you doing it? And here are some examples. I can go slower. More examples. More of the, oh, wow. There's pieces of paper as well, if you can't read that, which I don't think anyone can. Those are the changes that were made after the packets went out. So we only got the responses after the packets went out. So we've made some modifications. I don't know if everything is, I think the applicant's gonna wanna talk to you about these.
These are your modifications to a conversation.
Working with the applicant, we tried to, they had issues with those certain numbers. We tried to change them and kind of come to a compromise, but I don't think a compromise was met on some of them. But that was done yesterday and this morning. He is here, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add that, as Morgan has mentioned, when we met with them, worked through the different conditions, they spoke, we listened, and what we did was we went in and we modified those numbers that Morgan has mentioned in a way that felt like was appropriate and acceptable to represent the city's interest and provide some flexibility for the applicant. Yeah, but they are still in disagreement with number 1, I believe is the only one that they have a current issue with, so.
And the last part is that we did receive several calls on this proposed development, and those calls were all from people that live on this site, and they were not aware of the proposed development. So that's what those calls were. Do you have any questions?
Let me just make a point, ask for a point of clarification. On the request for the exchange incentive to raise the ISR from 50 to 70%, that is 70 is 20% more, but as far as a percentage increase, it's actually a 40% increase.
We debated the math on this one and went back and forth on this. This is what was decided.
Well, you know, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but the fact remains that 70 is 40%
There were
more than
different
50.
Calculations given. And we, some said this, some said that. We looked at old developments and we used what older approved
I know
developments
we've
have
done
done.
that before in the
Yeah.
past, but
Mr. Chairman, it's obviously worded in a manner that reasonable people could read it differently. I think it needs to be addressed in the future and probably fixed to say what
understand
we
what you're
want it
doing,
to
yeah,
say.
yeah.
But yeah, when the city council approved the old Sanford development that went through you not too long ago, what they approved was a 20% increase for the mill house lots and some others, and it was talked about as, I believe, a 50% up to 0.70. So this one, we're just trying to be consistent with the recent approval.
Well, the fact, yeah, we're increasing from 50 to 70%, that's the fact. And so the others is math, and it's.
So, can I go ahead and ask staff a question? So, one of the incentives that, my question is the buffer. So we didn't get more buffer, we just got a buffer with more inches in it?
For the exchanges?
Yes.
Yes, the vegetated buffer along the perimeter, that is one that they are gonna want to talk about.
I'm gonna wait.
Any more for staff? Okay, thanks. Mr. Basquin?
All right, Brett Basquin with the Foresight Group. All right, I'm gonna go back through, can you put up the, one question on the conditions right now, the ones you sent, so there's only, Steve, is there only 14 planning conditions now, like on that sheet you sent me? Total?
According to the modified,
According to
yeah.
this.
Yeah, okay, go, okay, all right, I
Thank
just
you.
wanna make sure. Yeah, the old ones were 17 and we're down to 14. I just wanna make sure that we're still talking about those
We're on
14.
14.
Can you go to the, yeah, go to that one and then
That top button is go to the next slide.
All right. So just talking through this type of development, it's a little different than what really we have the product type here. It's more of a what we call a T&D, traditional neighborhood development, where we have rear alley access to homes. Currently, there's very few developments here. There's some of this in Mims Trail, in some of the early phases of Mims Trail. But this alley-fed product is wildly popular all over the place. It's just not a product type that's done here. And the reason why it's not really done here is it's almost impossible with our current regulations. The ISR values of 50% are too low. Most of the builders you'll find here will tell you that the ISR values and the FAR values in our single-family stuff prohibits them from doing more unique product types, because really most of our codes are catered to front entry, front entry garage, 70-foot lots. If that's your product type, boy, we got the place for you. But if you want to do anything different than that, it is very difficult within the confines of our current normal ordinance, okay? So when we start talking about these alley-fed lots, the perimeter, which is, I'm gonna call gray for lack of a better color here, is 50-foot wide front entry single-family lots. That's gonna be a public street. The pink lots that are interior to that are alley-fed lots. They're gonna front on a public street, but the alleys are going to be private. There'll be private alleys. Those private alleys will provide access to the rear of these houses where their garages and everything else. Really, when you're starting to do these alley-fed type developments, what you're doing is you're getting a streetscape down the street. You're gonna have front porches, smaller front yards, which our minimum front setback is 20 feet, so it's gonna be a little different. Our houses are gonna be, usually they're in the 5 to 10 foot range, a setback from the right-of-way in most alley-fed type developments, but ours are 20 foot because that's what the code requires, 20-foot front setback with front porches and sidewalks and that type of stuff in the street. On the ends of where some of these alleys are coming, some of the alleys are going to be 100% on the back of a lot, and that is where our most extraneous ISR circumstances come in, is when we have a 20-foot alley wholly contained on the back of one lot. It's not really split on the lot, and that's when we start running into some of the ISR issues on the single-family lots. We are asking for the 20%. Really, the smaller rear alley fed is where we run into the ISR issues. The other ones where the 50-foot single-family lots are not. Now, one of the conditions we did agree to in here is that on the front-loaded townhomes and the front-loaded homes, the city's wanting a 10-by-10 patio, required patio on the rear of these sites, on the rear of the homes. So, that is, above and beyond is going to increase, the ISR requirements as well. On the townhome product, we have some front loads, but a majority of it is rear alley fed townhomes. Now, on these townhomes, there is on the rear alley fed townhomes, there's an interior courtyard, and I'll show you some pictures, an interior courtyard that separates the garage from the home. They actually have a conditioned hallway that connects their garages to their homes, and there's this interior courtyard that they have that some people use for, grilling, patio, for their dog, that kind of stuff. So I'll go through a little bit more of that. Let me go to the. So this is some examples of the front-loaded single-family lots, the 50-footers. This is showing some different types of materials, and you can do craftsman, you can do cottage style, you can do more traditional. We haven't quite landed on what theme we're going to go in there with, but this is typical product type for what we would anticipate to be similar to this. One of the other conditions we did agree to in this was, durable materials of brick, stucco, or cementitious fiberboard. So really, no vinyl siding, which we wouldn't use anyways. But just so we know, we did talk about potentially being able to use vinyl like in soffits, but not as an exterior, material other than, soffits or something like that. This next one is some of the alley fed, where you can see these homes are more street fronted to the streets. You can see top left picture is probably, that's about a 10-foot setback. We're going to be 20 feet, so there's going to be a little bit more front yard, but you can see where we got front porches, homes orientated towards the streets and rear alley fed.
What's the distance in the alley then? If you have 20 in the front, what do you have, the distance between the road behind the alley and the parking?
Yeah, I mean, it's
space?
going to be, what do you think on the?
Yeah,
Yeah.
18?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the car will be out of the alley between the
what-
house.
that's what I'm getting at. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine. I'll get into this a little bit more. One of the other things is in this neighborhood, we are going to have some fee simple, single-family lots. Well, the single-family 40-foot and 50-foot lots will be fee simple, single-family homes. The townhomes we're doing as multi-unit, as opposed to fee simple with private streets and that kind of stuff. In this entire neighborhood, all the exterior landscaping, everything will be done by the HOA. So you don't have to worry about Warren having a dead bush next door and not replacing it.
He's a problem.
Phil's gonna make sure that they're all, that everything's done. So the HOA will maintain all the exterior landscaping. Now, on the individual lots, that's fee simple ownership, the homeowner will be, but on the townhomes, all the exterior, parts of the building will be maintained, by the HOA. All right, I'll get into this because this is, I got a better slide for this. So this is some of the, this is our front entry townhomes, right? So this is, most of our townhomes, if you look in the packet, we've gone back and forth and talked to them. Most of our townhomes are going to be 2 bedrooms. There'll be some 3s, but very small. That's why the amount of parking that we're providing for that is limiting us to really a majority, about 75% is going to be 2 bedrooms, 25% 3 bedrooms, based upon the parking that we're providing. We also have some large park areas for open space. I know traditionally when I do a lot of these plans, most of the time we're trying to put our open space in, and most of our open space is around the perimeter of the site. We have some large 2-acre plus open spaces in the middle that plan to be amenitized with, dog parks, different things, pool, clubhouse, all that kind of stuff, but there'll be different parks for that. On some of this, I'll get into this on a different slide. All right, so can you hop back over to that slide and let me talk to this? So at Packet, Warren has some questions on some of this product where we're rear alley fed. When you're rear alley fed and you got a front porch, there's really not much yard space, for lack of a better term. So, all right, so this is an example of the rear alley fed townhomes. This was what I was talking about. In the bottom right-hand corner is this courtyard that is created. You're looking sideways from the side of the house. You're seeing the house on your right, the garage is on your left. What you see is the conditioned hallway in between. The bottom left-hand corner you can see is the hallway there, and you can kind of see how it turns. That's from the inside of the house looking out on what that courtyard looks like on those interior courtyards. So it's kind of a neat space just because you're townhome to townhome and you're rear alley fed, so all you really have is a front with a a covered stoop or a porch. So this gives them some outdoor space within the footprint of their home. So this is a floor plan of what I guess probably should have shown this first. It was probably a better example with the floor plan of the courtyard separating the garages, top of page, to the homes on the bottom of the page. So that just gives you an idea. Now, on the 40-foot wide single-family homes that are rear alley loaded, you can see top of the page, that's the private alley. For the most part, that private alley is on the shared property line. So, half of the street is going to be on one lot, half of the street is on the other. On some of the end units, it's wholly on one lot or the other. These are going to front a public street, or a private street. Well, actually, if these are my single family, they are going to have to front a public street there. So they really don't have a yard per se. So what we have done in the past, or what Warren has done in the past, is you have a use easement to where everybody has, like a 10-foot side yard. Now, 5 of that feet of that yard's on your property, but the 5 feet is on the is on the other side of that property line next to the house. That side of the house doesn't have any windows on the first floor or anything like that. If there's any windows, it'd be up on the second story. So here's kind of an example in the bottom left of kind of what that would look like. In the bottom left, you can see where you kind of have this covered courtyard on the side of the house that opens up to the side yard. You can see the house next door doesn't have any windows there, but it gives them at least some form of a yard space if they had a dog or want to sit outside or that kind of stuff. It gives them a space. The other 2 bottom examples are just kind of ways that sometimes they connect those with pavers and different things to lead people out. Here's a picture of one of the houses recently that Warren and them did, that basically you can see the outside courtyard. It's tight to the house next door, and basically that yard that you see is that unit. Now the property line is pretty much at the edge of that patio, but there's a use easement that is, and all this is spelled out in the HOA and in the covenants on how all that works. But that's how this side yard works when we have these rear alley, just because we're limited on the amount of space you can really do. So I just kind of wanted to give that example. Now, in regards to conditions, I think we talked through on planning, we've talked through all the conditions, and I think we're comfortable. The one condition that is up for debate that we want to talk about is is on one of the incentives is the 20-foot vegetative buffer. So, a residential buffer could be required depending on what my adjacent uses are adjacent to, the overall property. So in our case, right, the property to the north is a 40-year-old trailer park, right, with trailers. To the east of us is Auburn University, just woods. To the south of us, to the east, is Swan's remaining property. Well, I guess to the south of us. To the east is some duplexes and that little cutout there. In the southeast corner of Plan Southeast there is duplexes, and then to the south is the rest of Swan's property, and then of course to the west is street frontage. So really, we're incentivized, right? We're trying to screen them from us. We're not trying to screen us from them, I think is the point that we're trying to make. If we were against a traditional single-family neighborhood or something like that, totally understand some of that. But here, it's in our best interest. The best buffer that we can do is really in our best interest to screen what's adjacent to us, just because most of what's adjacent to us is not really that desirable. So in the incentive and exchange language, what it states is that you either have a undisturbed buffer, okay, or you plant a buffer to the residential buffer standards. So that's what it says. So if you remove anything, you have to plant it back to a buffer standard. But if you don't touch it, you don't have to do anything. Okay. And so what the language in what the language that's in here, the other part of this is it's taken us a lot. It's taken us a year and a half to get to this point to where we're just trying to figure out if we can do this project or not, right? So there's topo that we still have to resolve. There's all these different things. And we're afraid of committing to something in this when it says it has to be undisturbed if there's anything decent in there. Our concern is one, we know that all our sewer has to go back towards Cox Road. So we may have to fill on this east side that falls off to make sure that we can get everything to drain back to the west towards Cox Road where the sewer's at. We don't want to be in a situation where we're doing all of this work to save a tree that is prohibiting really to the benefit of what we're trying to do and help us screen anyway. So we just would like the flexibility. So the way the comment or the way the regulations state, it basically states that at the planning director's basically, if they view it's something that needs to be saved, they want it to be saved. And then we would talk about it through there. It's a little too subjective for us. We really just want to go by with what the code says. We're either going to leave it undisturbed, or if we touch it, we're going to plant it back. Part of that is, we want to have a buffer to screen the commercial from the residential back there. Some of this, we may be building berms to help screen more than what's out there. So, we want the flexibility to be able to do that. At the end of the day, the cheapest thing for us is not to clear anything. You know what I mean? It costs us money to take down a big tree or whatever to then plant something back. But if we're making that decision, we're making it for the best interest of being able to create a screen that's viable and is going to be for the benefit. I mean, if we don't produce a very good screen there, our product's not going to really move. So that's that. So that's the only planning comment on the exterior buffer. So we just want the flexibility to just do it per the thing. It's either undisturbed, or if we touch it, we basically improve it. The other one is on engineering. If you look at our plan that we have a mixture of public and private streets. We are providing a public street stub out between the townhomes and the 50-foot lots up at the north side of the page. And then we are fine with providing cross access to from the commercial to the adjacent property to the east, for cross access, not a big deal there. The city is asking us to provide an additional cross access public street to the north. The only way to do that would be on the south side, which is playing east here, and stub up from there. Really, that trailer park extends a majority of that length. They do have frontage on Cox. If we stub, we have to build the road, okay, all the way there. And I just feel like for a project of this size of only 70 acres and potential development potential adjacent to us and that tying in, we feel like one city stub to the north or to Barron's property, even though we're going to have a stub from the commercial as well, is sufficient. The other part of that is if the additional road that they're wanting is ever extended, it would align with Haley Lane. And if you know where Haley Lane is, that's where Tiger Transit parks their bus stop, right? It's that light industrial area. And we don't feel like tying a single-family residential neighborhood into that's an incompatible use in our mind for a cut-through road or a connection from that light industrial area through a neighborhood. We just don't think it is. The one to the north could be for future residential. It's fine, but we really we don't want that one. So that's that, and then
Can you,
Brett, which number is
yeah,
that?
let's talk about that for
Okay.
a second.
it would be in engineering.
No, that's commercial.
There's several stub out comments, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure which one.
yeah. So okay, so
6, yeah.
Yes, 6. Yeah, all the other ones are fine there.
And can you highlight again where those, well, I see where the 1 is, that's noted right now, right? And that's-
He's
and
got the marker on it.
And that's not the issue.
No, yeah.
It's the second one.
Yeah, so it would
Where's
have
the
to.
second one?
It would have to be either where he's got the cursor there or further to the right.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It would have to be
Okay.
back there is the only other place that you could do it.
Okay. That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So that's 6, and then, all right, the other thing is, they want us to extend on Cox Road where the townhomes are. We don't have that connected, as a second entrance off of Cox right there that he's pointing to. Okay. We're fine adding that connection there. We just want to make sure that we have some caveat in there that we're working with staff. We're concerned with sight distance and grades through there. If you look back, if you're looking at somebody coming from the roundabout, you're kind of snaking around 2 curves. And we just want to make sure that we haven't studied this, right? But if we don't have adequate sight distance and that kind of stuff, I don't want to have to come back to you guys to remove a requirement if we can't meet the sight distance and those types of things there. So I just ask that, that give staff some flexibility, that if we have some challenges there, that if we work it out to their liking, that we would be good, okay?
So, Ms. Frazier, is that part of would that be a DRT kind of thing, or is that something that you have looked at already? I mean, it seems to me that if this project's been rolling along as long as it has been, somebody ought to have a look at that.
Well, it just came up. This is something that when we get to DRT level is something we're required to provide to them,
Right.
that we can provide that. So yeah, as long as, if Allison is good with it, I just want to make sure that they have the flexibility that if for some reason the access gets modified, right, we can't have a certain movement or something like that that I don't have to come back here to get your guys' approval, that we can just work it out with staff. As long as.
That's not right, okay.
All right, and then the last one I'm going to talk about is around our open spaces on our public streets. So it's the 2 green blobs in the middle there, okay? Those are over 2 acre tracts there where we plan on amenitizing those for the neighborhood there. We're showing on-street parking, like parallel on-street parking there. And so one of the conditions here is to not have that on-street parking. And I would just remind you that if I don't provide parallel spaces, the city code allows us in residential neighborhoods to park on the street. And so people are going to go and park on the street at these locations. All we're trying to do is provide a refuge area for them to park and not block trash trucks and ambulances, fire trucks, and other people trying to drive down the road. We have done that at Mims Trail, around the amenity at Mims Trail pool, but those were head-on spaces. It's like you were parking at a grocery store, head-on, and you truly had to back out, right? These are parallel spaces where you're parallel parking around those amenities. We're hoping to do that. We feel like these amenities would be much better than having an asphalt parking lot out there to just walk to be able to go to. It also provides an area, right, that if you do have visitors, instead of parking on the streets, we can force people to not park on the streets, but park in these parallel spaces as part of the HOA covenants as well. So it gives us a mechanism to prevent people from parking on the street because they have a place that they can go if they're having a Final Four party or something like that, right? So those are the only ones on commercial. So, I know the on-street parking thing is probably a bigger thing, with council and everything, but, just wanted to provide that. We feel like it enhances the open spaces as opposed to detrimental to them, so.
That last one referred to point 8?
Yes,
Okay,
to number 8, yeah. But everything else, I know I just talked for a long time. So I'm sure you have questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And, if I need to walk through some of this product type more for you, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Thank you so much.
Before you go, I've got,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, please.
Back to the, you called them shared access easements.
Yeah.
I raised those in the packet. You showed an example of one person putting a paved patio out there in that shared access easement. Does that mean then, under this circumstance, this is a new product for me. Does that mean then the neighbor next door who has shared access there can come and sit on his patio?
No, so if you look at this, so look at the example he has up there, okay? So the house on the, on the left, right? His outdoor area is the dark blue area, right? So it's his, right? So it's really an access easement for you to use the neighbor's property. So the guy, the second house in would have his orange would be his side yard, right? The third house in would have the pink as the side yard, right? And then the house on the end would have the light blue. You know what I mean? It's really not a shared use where you can both use it. It's more of a shared use where you're using your 5 feet plus you're using your neighbor's 5 feet for your side yard.
Mr. Chairman,
I must have.
I was just going to say, it's really the 5 and the 5 on the next door property is reserved for the use and enjoyment of the person who lives in the house with the blue circle on it. And so they don't know it,
He's
but
an
it's
avid, he can
for
probably
them.
explain to you a little
Hey,
bit better.
so like Brett said, the blue yard, the house to the right only has a maintenance easement into their side yard. And then the blue has a easement into that yard. And so it's in the covenants and reciprocates, so everybody has the same issue. So if you lived in the house with the orange or yellow there, you only, and all your utilities and all your condensing units and stuff are in your side yard. So you really never need to get into the other side yard until you need to maybe paint or maintain your house. They're all hardy, some of them are all brick, so the maintenance is very minimal. And so you can just let your neighbor know, hey, I'm maintaining, I'm painting my house next door. But he doesn't have the use of that. Only the guy that has the blue has the use to it. And it reciprocates down, so it's fair, everybody has the same situation. Now, so the old days you used to have, 0 lot line.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. What makes that different from the used?
Well, you can't do 0 lot line now because the code's changed. You have to have, the closest you can build is 3 feet
Yeah.
without a fire rating. So there's a 5-foot line that goes down between the middle. And so you have no fire rating because you keep the 10-foot distance between buildings, but you do it by use easements now. Because with the code, won't let you build on the property line.
Okay.
So, any other question? Thank you.
Thanks. Any more questions for clarification? We do. We good for now? Okay, this does require a public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. Would anybody like to come forward and speak on this item? It's Planned Development District for Swan Farm rezoning. Please state your name and address and sign in if you will when you're done.
Gary Cantini, 608 Owens Road. Okay, I'm glad Warren asked the one question. It would be my first question, but on the issue of the ISR, if I'm understanding this right, they're only asking for the increase for the potential, like where the entire private alley or whatever is on the backside. Is there a way you can approve this, sectionize this, where some of the ones are still at the approved level and the others get the added, so there's not a way for them to take the other properties not impacted and effectively get more use of the ISR, where they're only basically saying a small percentage of these lots are really going to be impacted and need the approval for a larger limit?
Anybody else? Who will be next? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And let's have a motion and discussion.
Well, thank you so much for all the pictures.
Love the pictures.
That's helpful. Two, I'm actually headed to a TND in Franklin, Tennessee this next coming week, so I completely understand what you're saying. If you haven't seen it in person, Warren, that's worth it to go and like actually walk it and see it in real life. But my question is about the buffer. I don't actually have a problem with the ISR because they did ask for it in the townhouse separately from the single family detached. So a buffer is probably I want to be able to maximize that. I feel like that's important. Out there, it's a lot of pasture land. There's not a lot of growth. I'd like for there to be some boundary there. Great development. I think it looks lovely, so.
Well, that kind of leads me to ask the question, you know, so we were talking about this earlier, both at Packet and earlier, with the wording in the, of the conditions for approval under planning, that number one, it sounds like there's, well, some of this might be ready for having a motion on the table before we get involved with it. Yeah, let's, hold
I mean,
some
20 feet is
discussion.
20 feet, right? So the question is, what leeway do they have to remove and rebuild? But it's not a question of whether or not the 20 feet is going to change. Is that correct?
Well, that was,
Right,
Yeah, it'll be 20 feet.
right.
so that's,
I mean, am I understanding your issue or your versus departments?
Mine, but.
No, I was
the-
pointing to the applicant. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay, okay. I
Sorry,
didn't
sorry.
write that one. That was
Yours,
Steve, so he can
Lochapoka.
explain it.
No, theirs
Yeah.
versus staff.
You're right.
Okay.
We gotta provide the 20 feet because that's
Yeah.
part of the deal.
Yeah.
Would you like for us to provide some background on that?
Yes.
Okay,
That
I
sounds
was
good.
waiting for you to ask.
Yep. I did have a
Provide
why. The
some
why was
background there.
coming.
Oh,
Please.
I'd be glad to.
I got a couple of whys,
So
actually.
I think we have a philosophical different opinion on this between staff and the applicant, really. Yes, it's a 20-foot space right along the property line, goes around the perimeter of the site. Now, I'm going to say that I would read the code differently than the applicant does. So when the code says that, and got it here, you're basically a vegetative buffer along the perimeter, 20-foot wide undisturbed natural buffer or landscape buffer along the perimeter. I would not read that as mutually exclusive items. You know, if, for instance, there was a portion of the perimeter buffer that was really densely vegetated, I would not say, well, gee, we have to select one or the other for the entire perimeter. That wouldn't make any sense. And the reason for staff's condition being the way it's worded was try to provide the flexibility that I thought the applicant was looking for. In other words, we don't have any information, we have no data at this point in time that tells us for that perimeter 20 feet, what's out there. You know, are there some existing mature trees out there that would make sense to keep? Are there some good specimens out there that would be part of a good buffer? And so the intent was just to provide that flexibility to preserve some vegetation when it goes through DRT and we have some more information provided by the applicant. If there isn't anything out there to preserve, if it's a bunch of scrub material that doesn't lend itself to a good buffer, we would be more than happy at that point in time to say, makes sense to go ahead and take it all down. So that was the intent. And I think that the code, in my opinion, as director, gives you and the city the ability to, you know, provide for preservation at the same time as if you, let's say you have a stretch and you're able to preserve a certain number of trees out there that just makes sense. Then you would supplement the existing vegetation that you preserve with other vegetation that is talked about in that buffer in 422.03 to establish the proper buffer. So I think you read it in context of both attempts and one. And if you want me to talk more about that, I can. There's other exchanges in there that talks about housing the same way.
Intent-wise, it sounds like you're in violent agreement. However, the wording of the, can you read that first couple of sentences of that ordinance again? It says one or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, that, you know, is legalese for you do one or the other, or there can be some kind of issue later on.
Sure, I'll be glad to read to you. So in the code, it says vegetative buffer along the perimeter, a 20-foot wide undisturbed natural or landscape buffer along the perimeter of the development site. And it explains what an undisturbed natural buffer open space is: an unimproved area that has retained its natural character of trees, shrubs, and ground covering. A landscape buffer must meet the standards for residential buffer.
Well, it's the word "or" that kind of
That's fine.
makes me
And I would tell you this,
key
for
in on
instance,
that.
there are other exchanges in the incentive exchange area, right? And one of them is this, it says, housing for the elderly and/or low moderate income should be, anyway, here's what it says. If a combination, I don't have the actual wording, well, I probably do. Just one second. All right, so in the code, under exchange, it has housing for the elderly and/or low moderate income. And it does say and/or there, but then it says provision of housing qualifying as elderly housing or low-moderate income families in accordance with federal guidelines. And I guess when I read that, I just think of it the same way. I think that if somebody came in, they want to do housing, but they don't want to have all elderly housing. But maybe they want to have some that's senior housing and some that's this other type of housing for low to moderate income. I think you'd want to get the best of both worlds, if you will, and be able to do that. That's just the way I would interpret it. But the decision is yours as far as if you want to approach this from the standpoint of, well, we'd like to see if we can preserve some existing vegetation where it makes sense, and then provide a brand-new buffer where it's not possible to preserve vegetation. I think you go with staff's
Then how do
recommendation.
you make the calculation, let's say we want to keep some, I mean, is there you get out there and start measuring what you're keeping and, how do you make that decision on what more does he have to add? If he's leaving the big oak tree, how do you make that decision on,
Sure. Yeah, to me, the way I read it, ultimately, we're looking for a landscape buffer that meets the requirements of 422.03, and that spells out what has to be within that buffer. Okay, it's 20 feet, but what has to be within that buffer, right? So to me, and the reason for wording the condition the way we did was to provide that flexibility where, for instance, in other cities where I've worked, you might have at the time you're looking at a PUD or a PDD in our case, you might have data from a tree survey where somebody goes out and they take, readings and GPS bearing for a certain tree. And on the plan, it'll say, hey, 20-inch live oak or, 15-inch pine, and not necessarily all about saving pines. But if it's a nicer tree, where it makes sense, you would see that information on here, and we'd already have an idea of if it makes sense. Because while there are trees in certain areas on this land, we don't know if they're within the 20-foot buffer, the trunk, or if it's outside the 20-foot buffer. So we were trying to kick that can down the road a little bit, and when they go through DRT, take a look at what information the applicant can provide at that point in time so we can make a determination in a proper sense as to whether there's vegetation that makes sense to be kept. So if you want to be able to leave that door open to preserving some vegetation, I think staff's condition works. If you want to go with, let's just go with brand-new buffers and have them plant 20-foot buffers that just meet that code, then I think we can change it to reflect that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Additional questions. If you don't mind, it looks like under engineering, looks like the applicant is concerned about notes 5, 6, and 8. So I have a question. As far as note 6, that is clearly something we're going to have to address. But as far as 5 and 8, the wording is we recommend and should be instead of shall be. So is it staff saying that the applicant could decide not to do those two, like 5 and 8, if they chose not to, and they could still move forward if they fulfill the rest of their requirements? Am I reading it correctly?
As a condition of approval, I always try to make sure that it's written in the, either it's a may, like we had in Old Sanford. It said, we'd like to have the school site relocated to the interior of the site if possible, right? So that was not a mandatory statement. If there's something under engineering or planning or water resources management that the intent is to make it happen, then it should say either shall or the developer will, or those types of things. For instance, in number 8, I was reading that, and it says, we recommend removing the on-street parking. Well, I didn't catch that as we were putting the packet together, but we wouldn't want to have a recommendation statement in a condition of approval. So I think it goes back to that discussion. If you are in favor of them having on-street parking, I'll let the city engineer talk about that and give her reasons to you as to what the issues are. But it would be better if it said remove
Right. If you
the
made it to
parking
say,
from the street, as
right.
opposed to we recommend. Yeah.
It should be, shall be instead of should be. Should be, to me, sounds like they don't have to do it. It's
Yeah, and if it's going to say should, then we get to DRT and we're going to have those discussions and see what happens. Yeah. unless it's in the engineering manual.
Well, that's a good, that leads me to the question you suggested is, in this particular is the ordinance say no parking on, what's the ordinance say in terms of parking on the public street? Why are we saying don't do it? Is that just says it bans it completely?
I
on
couldn't
public-
find a reference in the city code that we allow it. The case Brett mentioned with Mims Trail was done in '04, '05, I think, through lengthy waivers. I think Warren may have been the only one on the planning commission at the time. But they must have had, I don't know, maybe 10 or so design waivers. One of those was for the on-street parking. And that was granted by the planning commission and subsequently by the city council as part of the zoning of Mims Trail.
Can I relate to that particular issue of parking on the street as a not former board member, president of a homeowners association? Parking on the street is the most difficult part of your covenants to enforce because the city, it's a public street. So you tell somebody you cannot park on a public street, and they'll just go to the police, and the police will say, no, you've got 72 hours before we stripe you, and all you have to do is drive around the block and come back and park there again. And so it's very difficult. And unless it is where you're causing an unsafe condition, not necessarily a nuisance to the people that you're parking in front because they want to look at your big F-250 all day, but it's very difficult. I think what he's trying to do here would allow you, if we'd had some way say, no, you can't park in front of these houses, but you can park down here at this common parking area, would have given us much more leverage to enforce our covenant there. So the question, I just want to say that it may not be a bad thing for them to have that parking on designated parking at that amenity. Or if they didn't have it on the street, they'd have to take some pervious surface in the amenity area to make it impervious in order to do so. So it's a matter of, it's not what we desire. It's in residential. I thought we were going to have fights in the street over parked cars in front of people's houses, but they just do it. But anyway, that's my question. Now I got the floor on that one. Can I mention another to the?
Absolutely.
All right, I've got a question related to the private street. We talked in Packet about would there be a problem of people who are leaving the private homes here to the east and going to the commercial area on a private street which would be maintained by the homeowners association of the townhomes? Is that still, I mean, are you aware that's the way you've got that? That's what it looks like to me.
So this property would have master covenants, so
Yeah.
the commercial will be included in the covenants, and
Yeah.
they would have a payment agreement for their share of the road.
Oh.
And just like you share detention, we're gonna have the commercial
so-
have the same detention as the homeowners, and then the commercial only uses 20%, well, then when it goes to come to clean the pond out, they will pay 20%, homeowners pay 80%. So we
So-
have a shared, so it'd be a totally access agreement that every property owner in there can go through there, and
The
the
entire
commercial has.
PDD, not just the townhouse, all the homes as well, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, so you're gonna assess everybody as far as the dues that
Right.
will pay that, because I know that most homeowners association will be shocked at how
Right.
much it costs per square foot
Oh, yeah.
to repave a street.
And just like Brett said, you'll have a sub-association for the townhomes
Yeah.
because the HOA will pay the extra maintenance, the roofing, clean the windows, the insurance, but it wouldn't be part of the single family because they're gonna maintain the exteriors, but just the landscaping can be done by the HOA. So you'll have separate different fee
so-
structures for the different product types.
Okay, so,
But they all would have the right and easement and on the public and the private road to go through there.
Before you leave, one question that I meant to ask earlier. The alleyways, are they private or public?
They're private, that's they're on the lots, and that's why we need the ISR,
Okay.
because, they're shared on,
I got it
on
now, yeah.
2 lots, and sometimes on the corners, they're on 1 lot.
Okay.
I have a general comment, and I'm sorry, I don't even know if this is appropriate for this setting, but there's a small piece of the Highlands subdivision that I own property in that was designed this way with the alley-fed back entrances. It was supposed to be for seniors, very similar, and it's just a very small piece of what later became a more traditional subdivision. But the sanitation department with the city will not pick up cans from those private alley streets, which are where the garages are, which is where the can lives. And so you've got retired people potentially having to haul their can all the way through that shared side yard to the front and then haul it back. And for seniors, that can be an issue. And so I say that just so that somebody will be aware, but also I don't know if that's something that can be addressed with the
Yeah,
city sanitation or not.
That should be in the
I believe there's a note in there somewhere that talked about there unfortunately being dumpsters. When the city has multi-unit type facilities like this, apparently we require dumpsters as opposed to individual rollout type containers, so,
That would just be for the townhouse part, right?
for the townhouse portion.
Right. So this is for the individual homes.
Okay.
They can't get their trash picked up in the back.
Yeah, we can meet with
Of those
sanitation and
alley.
work that out. These alleys aren't too narrow that you can't drive a truck down, so it's, you know, it's a 2-way alley. And so sometimes if they're private streets and the alleys are too narrow, they won't do it.
Okay.
Depending on their, now, we have found third-party companies that have smaller trucks that will do it sometimes, and then that would just be in their HOA fees,
Okay.
we found out.
Thank you. Just something to
Good,
consider.
thanks.
Could I add a comment on, I guess it was, question on the easement? I haven't talked to our city engineer yet, but I would think that even though those are private streets, the route that we were talking about from where the single family is over to the commercial, you have a stretch of a private street there. I would expect that at some point we would have an easement, public ingress egress easement that would be overlaid on that private roadway.
Yeah,
That would provide for that.
I would just want to make sure that it's maintained, because it'll catch more wear and tear than just
Yeah.
the people who live in those townhouses.
Sure, I think it should go all the way to actually
You're
Wire
gonna prorate
Road.
that, so that answers my question.
Okay.
All right, I think we're ready for a motion. So, would somebody like to propose one? And may perhaps consider, my suggestion would be considering some of the conditions for approval in that motion.
I'll start it with a motion, and then we can discuss it, I think.
Okay.
I move, trying to find the first page of this thing now. I move that the Swan Farm Rezoning Plan Development District PDD overlay be approved, subject to the conditions included in the staff report, with the exception of the parking, no parking on the street at the designated area of the open space there. That's the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Would that be, you received a handout tonight that had amended conditions of approval on
Oh,
it, so would
okay,
it be
yeah, the
that
amended-
page
Yeah, the amended
with
conditions.
the 14 as opposed to the 17?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
amended, the amended conditions, yeah, I've been working on the other sheet.
And he's suggesting remove
Number 8, is that going to be
number
Under engineering.
Under
8
engineering,
underneath, yeah, without number 8 under
the-
engineering.
yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Now, but I didn't read the master plan as showing parking along the proposed public streets. I thought we were only showing it along the parking on the public streets on the sides of the open space.
No, they've got it along the
There's some other,
townhome sections,
Oh, the townhomes, yeah, okay.
but those are public streets in front of the townhomes, as well as around the 2 amenity sites.
Oh. Well, then
Is that clear to you? There are private streets that are the shaded streets, And the private streets in the townhome area, that does have parking on those, and that's not an issue for
Yeah.
staff. It's
No,
the
I was-
other ones
yeah.
where it's public.
No, I was just talking about the parking that is adjacent to the open space. And of course, they'll be driving golf carts there too.
May I clarify?
Yes, let's
Would you
do that.
repeat what you're saying? I'm sorry, I'm not following what you're.
Well, I wasn't aware, but I am now. I was mainly concerned that it was a good idea, and therefore I was going to exempt that requirement of no parking on the streets. But I was primarily thinking that it was around the two major open space parcels. And I hadn't thought about those, didn't notice those on the public street at the townhouse.
the same, on street.
So I can live with either one of those. I just think it's a good idea to have it there at the open.
I agree.
If
So
you
you're
mark it, you can enforce it only on one side of the street. That's another problem on these neighborhood streets, is that they want to park one car on this side and one on the other side, and you don't have, you couldn't get through there with a golf cart, much less an ambulance.
So do we have, so just to clarify that motion, approve all staff conditions except engineering number 8.
I'll make that as a motion for, then we can discuss it and do it.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I don't have a strong feeling on it, but you didn't address on the engineering comments, note 6, which would be the only one it's in stone, and it's something that he did mention. I'm not saying that we should take it out or anything, but
6.
That
on
is
the
also a
planning.
question of mine.
Well, we can have an amendment, easy enough, but,
Well, yeah,
so
like-
what do you feel about that then?
My question is whether or not number 6 stubs out into the same ownership as the one up here between townhouses and single family.
Yes, if I remember correctly.
Do we
Yes.
already have one existing stub out into the
Right.
land that is owned by the same people?
Yes.
And they're talking
Okay.
about these being the other ones.
So I would like to amend Warren's motion to also remove number 6 under engineering.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the amendment, so let's talk about, anything to talk about on the amendment? I tend to agree that that's a good idea myself.
I agree.
Want to have a vote, let's have a vote on the amendment. So right now, the original motion is approve the PDD, all staff comments, except, and conditions, except engineering, condition number 8, so we're gonna remove that. It has been amended to additionally delete engineering number 6, so that we don't have to have another, stub out. So we're voting on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The amendment carries, so we'll remove engineering condition number 6, and we go back to the original motion. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries as well. So we recommend approval with all staff conditions, except for and that with the amendment numbers 6 and number 8. Okay, now we're on to the same property as of concern. This is this is item number 4, which is CU 2022-004, which is a conditional use request.
Yes, good
Miss
evening.
English.
Hello. This final case for the Swan Farm PDD on tonight's agenda is a request for approval of uses from a number of categories, including institutional, office, road service, nursery, commercial support, and commercial and entertainment uses. The commercial portion of the PDD is located in the northwest portion of the development site. and comprises approximately 4.11 acres. At build-out, it is shown to include 4 buildings and approximately, or totaling, 64,000 square feet of commercial space. Staff does support the majority of requested uses, except for the ones here shown in red strikeout. It's kind of hard to read. All of the institutional uses we recommend not be permitted, as well as, let me see if I can, gasoline service station, veterinary office with outdoor pens, funeral home, precious metal purchase and sales, and that's all. The applicant has agreed to remove these uses from the request. The DRT review will evaluate any drive-through configuration as well as driveway spacing on Cox and Wire roads. There may need to be adjustments made to both of those, but that will be reviewed during DRT. Staff does recommend approval, recommends that you forward to the City Council a recommendation for approval of the uses minus these stricken out here. And there are also a number of conditions included in your packet that would accompany that approval.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Basquin, anything to say? Had a seat up front.
Yeah, we're good. We're good with everything. Yeah, I mean, it was my bad. I attached the actual wrong conditional. I attached the ones from Cox and Wire instead of the revised ones for this. So the ones that they struck through is just totally good. We're good there. And just, this is, we do, we have a phasing schedule as part of this. This is our phase 3. It may come in, hopefully it comes in sooner than that, but we do have this thing phased out. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
A lot of people who live right there. Where's Fido gonna stay?
Well, you can have
Drive down the
a
road.
regular vet with an indoor kennel. This was
No Grove Bark.
outdoor.
You can't
Well, no, they don't have outdoor kennels. They're inside. They just let them play outside.
I see a lot of people with a lot of dogs.
Okay, this requires a public hearing, so anybody like to come forward at this time and have something to say? Please do come forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, in the staff report, you have 2 different sections. One has recommended conditions of approval, so I want to make sure that there's clarity there. It has planning, engineering, water resources management, and then there are general staff comments. Just, the comments are just comments. Those would not be conditions of approval, so I want to make sure we're all clear on that. And then just, it was mentioned by Amber, and I appreciate her saying that, the plan that you have on the screen right now, there is a drive-through shown next to the 24,000 square foot building. So we are concerned about the angle of going through that drive-through and having to look back over your shoulder 180 degrees to kind of see where where the traffic may be that's coming. So the merging is concerning for us. So that's one of the reasons for that condition and why it's in there, is just we'd like to look at that at DRT and maybe massage it a little bit.
All right. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to approve
Second.
Any discussion?
with all staff conditions.
All staff conditions
Sorry. I'm sorry.
and consideration of comments? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Item number 5, this is case CU 2022-005, Arc Company, North Dean Road. This is a revised conditional use. Mr. Howell.
Yes, good evening. Okay, so this is a conditional use request for a performance residential multi-unit development located at 1397 North Dean Road in the Comprehensive Development District with a Planned Development District overlay. This might look very familiar to you. This was originally heard in 2020 and was approved as a multi-unit development. Conditional uses have an 18-month expiration date. they have to be able to get a building permit during that time in order to take advantage of what's been approved. There is an allowance made for a single 6-month extension for conditional uses should a applicant feel like they're not gonna be able to get that 18-month. So 2020, this was originally approved, not too long ago in August of last year, y'all approved the 6-month extension for this development. The applicant is still not ready to get their building permit, although they have expressed that they're making progress through engineering to get that point. They have gone through the development review team. Staff departments have all weighed in on that process and have given their feedback, to which the applicant has already made all their changes. However, they're still reaching that new deadline of June and are concerned. So the only avenue for them to then continue to be able to have that conditional use, since they've already used that 6-month extension, is to then get a new one. And so that is what this is. As proposed, they are requesting 250 units, which is the same as was originally approved and which was discussed during the conditional use extension. They meet all requirements. Staff recommends approval. We have not heard anything from anybody asking questions or concerns in support or against. The applicant is here and pending any of your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Baskin, have anything to say? Like I said, you should have said.
Now, this is just a COVID casualty project on this one. They've actually have closed on the land. They're in the process of getting financing for the construction loan. We're not comfortable chancing it that it expires in June, so there's no other avenue but to get it reapproved. So that's essentially all it is. Plans and everything building plans are approved, civil plans are approved, everything's ready to go. It's just getting to the final loan in place on the construction side. So that's all it is. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Okay, this requires a public hearing. Anybody would like to come forward, speak on this at this time? Looks like we have mostly staff here. Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion or a conversation, a motion? Question?
Before, of engineering. Allison, you make a point to say that the major street plan envisions that North Dean Road would be eventually extend to Highway 280 and be a 3-lane road. Is there, as it's designed now, will you still have enough land right away? Will you need to acquire any?
Yes.
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 Okay.
This is accessing the existing section of
Okay.
North Dean Road, but
Okay.
north of here to 280, we would do probably a very similar section.
Okay. All right.
I move to approve CU 2022-005.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 6. This is a preliminary plat, PP 2022-003, Parker Creek Townhomes.
Yes.
Mr.
good-
Kipp.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Commissioners. The request before you is for a preliminary plat approval for a 31-lot performance subdivision located on the south side of East Longleaf Drive near the Walmart Shopping Center. The subject property consists of one lot of record, which kind of wraps around a multi-unit development, and is zoned CDD and with SCCD adjacent to it. The proposed subdivision consists of 30 townhome lots and 1 open space lot on approximately 6.28 acres, resulting in a density of just over 4 dwelling units an acre. The developer has provided a conceptual plan for the remainder of the property, and this section of it does comply with that outline. The proposed subdivision meets or exceeds the requirements of the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance. Pending staff comments, and staff recommends approval with conditions which are included in your packet. and I did not receive any correspondence from the public for this request. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
We did not have the representative here. Yeah, this requires a public hearing. Anybody would like to come forward and speak at this time? Parker Creek Townhomes. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. For questions, comments? My only little bit of a concern on this one is the way the houses along, we talked about this at Packet, the way the housing faces Longleaf. You know, do we get the back of the fence or no fence at all in everybody's backyard, or do we get the front end of the townhouse along that stretch? You know, I know these meet the minimum requirements, but is there any way to?
You mean like East University, right?
Well, it's if you, yeah, right here at the top where it's got the cursor. Those particular homes will either, you know, if we don't have anything on the back, like there's no buffering requirements on this, or is there?
There are buffer requirements and landscaping requirements. There are also requirements to screen mechanical and electrical equipment. Staff did look at that, and in your staff report, you'll see a recommendation to front those units on East Longleaf. It's not required per the subdivision regulations, but certainly within the Planning Commission's purview to place that as a requirement.
Oh, we can actually put that requirement on that, to turn them around. Or, you know, the other option that we talked about that I thought was okay too would be a developer installed some sort of fence that would, you know, look nice back there, and then, you know, you can buffer outside it, and then you don't have, because I've seen a couple different places on main thoroughfares like this one where you've got, you know, one fence is 6 feet out from the door and the other's 30 feet out from the door, and then you've got all the junk in the backyard, and, you know, I'd like to stay away from that kind of stuff, so. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out which piece of, yeah, which piece of Longleaf.
Is it?
So here's
It's
the,
not like South College or East University or
Right.
Dean or something like that. Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as Logan just mentioned, if you have the ability to actually require the units to face onto West Longleaf, if you were so inclined, you could say, word a condition that says, you know, the units will either face West Longleaf Drive, or if they face internal to the site, that there be the option of providing a solid fence with some landscaping on the outside of it. That would just impact a little bit of the design in terms of where do you put that. You know, in other words, sometimes you'll have a common area along a street where you can put those plantings and it's maintained by the HOA. So you could, I think you could word that for those units that back up. And then the other question would be, there's one unit that actually sides up against West
Right.
Longleaf. And if you're going to do that, you might want it continued across the side of that lot as well. It looks like a fairly wide lot, so I don't know if that would create any developmental issues or not. But the applicant is not here to, I guess, address those. So conversely, you could also, well, we'd have a problem if we deferred it, I guess, because they're not here and you have a certain time limit on plats, so.
You do make a
At
motion.
least they gave us the whole idea. I mean, to see that's not the only piece.
Yeah, there's
that
gonna
you
be
have all
another
these,
piece.
yeah.
Feelings on that, one way or the other?
I feel good about requiring them to front Longleaf. I wouldn't want, like, that would not be my preference if I were a homeowner.
Fence? Okay. Anybody would like to make a motion? Or me? It's all me? Okay. I will make a motion to approve, to recommend, to approve this preliminary plat with staff conditions and add the requirement that the homes are, what's the right term? Oriented so that the front door is on Longleaf for, and I guess we could be specific about those lots, couldn't we?
I believe they're lots 1 through 8.
Well, I'm gonna go with reversing it.
Oh,
Didn't you say
all
that?
right.
Okay. Because there's gonna be additional, so I would say for any of the townhomes that, that are on Longleaf Drive, they have to face, the front door has to face Longleaf Drive.
I like what Logan said. He said lots 1 through 8, so it would have to be all or nothing, obviously, right?
Right.
So if you want to say the townhomes on lots 1 through 8 would need to be oriented with their fronts facing West Longleaf Drive.
Okay. That's-
Or then, if they don't do that, if you want to give them an out with the fence and landscaping, you could do that.
I'll add that one as an option, one or the other, okay? So either they oriented so that they're facing Longleaf, or that the developer provides some form of fencing and landscaping buffer.
Solid fence with landscaping
Solid
outside of it.
fence. Solid fence, yes.
And if that was the case, would it also then apply to lot number, what is that, Logan?
The other one,
The sideways one?
I believe it's 18.
Okay, thanks.
I also want to include the next phase. Do you have the lots on those? I'm actually looking at in the future, you know, if you look at the larger plat, that there's about, 10 or 12 of them up there north of it?
These were part of a preliminary and final plat approval that you saw about 2 or 3 months ago that were approved. They have not platted these yet, but they did
Okay,
get
so we
approval.
will see them again.
You will not see them again.
Oh, we won't see them again? They need to be included can they be included?
Those lots don't have double frontage.
Oh, they
Either.
don't? Okay.
Right.
And they've
Good.
been approved, right?
Okay, then that's the end of my
I will second that motion.
motion. Okay, any discussions further on that?
I just won't say one thing. I think in this case, I probably intend to probably vote no, but not because I have a substantive problem with the condition, just in that because the applicant's not here to speak, and to me, I just don't feel comfortable
Okay.
that way. So
It's his choice.
Any further? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
no.
Okay, let's have a roll call real quick.
Robin Bridges,
Yes.
Phil Chancellor,
Yes?
Marcus Marshall,
No.
Warren McCord,
Yes.
Annette Reese,
Yes.
Bob Rittenbach,
Yes.
Wendy Birmingham.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries. That, is there any other, I don't have any, there's no other business, I have no communication, staff, anything else?
Thank you for asking. All right, so did want to make one announcement because I was looking at the calendar and your next meeting, I believe, is like the 15th or something like that of April. And that will be after Jay Howell's final day with the city of Auburn. And so Mr. Howell has other plans, and I won't elaborate on that, but he can if he would like to. But we're going to miss him. I appreciate all the work he's done for the city of Auburn and the planning department, and we certainly wish him the best.
We do.
There can't be any best. He's already had it.
Oh, well.
You've done a fine job.
I mean, it's downhill all the way, man.
Right. It doesn't get any better than this.
Yeah.
Way to go. Congratulations there. Wish you Godspeed and good luck.